Hi everyone, it's Rena, and this video is for the full moon in Aries, which is happening on the 24th of September. And my time is Central Standard Time in the United States, and it's at 9:53 p.m. And this is at 1 degree of Aries, so very close to the cusp with Pisces. And I was just thinking about this. I guess it's like a week from now when I'm recording this, a week before this happens. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this full moon is coming up. And I think this is pretty much a doozy in a lot of ways. There's going to be a T-square forming at this time, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just the sign of Aries itself, if you think about what Aries represents, very volatile emotionally, and there's a lot of passion with Aries, but there's a lot of impulsivity, and we're talking about moon. So we're talking about an emotional influence that is very fiery, fire sign, and it has that cardinal influence, which means that the cardinal signs, like Aries, like its opposite sign Libra, like Capricorn, and like Cancer, these are take charge signs. These are signs that like to take action. And when you have the moon in a cardinal sign, and also when somebody, let's say somebody has a conjunction between the moon and Mars, that's another example. They tend to be very driven by their emotions. And so especially in matters of love, they can really make a mess out of things sometimes if they're not careful, because Aries is very impulsive, and the emotions it's easy for them to get carried away. All the fire signs tend to exaggerate. And exaggeration can be, it doesn't have to be exaggerating negative things. They can tend to blow things up and make them like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread and all that stuff. So it's really about, making sure that you are emotionally grounded, because you may get carried away. Now, whenever there's a full moon, we're talking about an opposition from the sun. So this can represent, as in some cases, domestic versus career issues. And one example is someone who wants to stay at home with their child, but they also don't want to lose their career. Also, we're talking about the two signs that form the opposition. So in this case, we're talking about Libra as the sun and Aries as the moon, and what they represent. And the sun is in the seventh, represents the seventh house, or Libra is the seventh house, and the moon is in the first house. So this can manifest as needing, maybe discovering something about your needs versus how you are in a partnership. And for some people, you're going to have enough, because with this T-square, a T-square is when, 3 or more planets are squaring another planet. And in this case, the planet that they're squaring is Saturn. So that's pretty intense that there's these squares to Saturn, because Saturn can be a Debbie Downer, and I'm looking at it from the more challenging aspect of it. Saturn can be a real great disciplinarian in the positive sense of kind of making people be more practical and orderly in what they're doing, and also more realistic. But on the negative side, for instance, one of these squares is the moon to Saturn. it can be a depressing effect because we're talking about emotions, and Saturn is not a warm and fuzzy planet. It can really sometimes veer into cynicism, where it's like, you think you can, you think that relationship stands a chance. Are you kidding me? And with Mercury square Saturn, pessimistic thinking, okay? And with the Sun square Saturn, looking, taking stock in your life and, saying, is that all there is? So those kind of things can create a lot of tension. That's kind of what a square really represents. There's a lot of tension going on, but there's so much potential for growth. That's one of the things about a T-square, is that it can really propel you to, bust free from your limitations, because Saturn can represent limitations. And that's all good because, I already decided before I did this video that I was going to say, that I was going to call it Something's Gotta Give, because that tension that comes before the change is really apparent here. We have Venus and Mars, the divine lovers, squaring up also. So that tension in relationships. Also, we have Mars square Uranus. This has been a common theme in, for 2018, there's been a lot of this Mars square Uranus energy, which is extremely rebellious and can be quite, what's the word? That is not the positive manifestation of spontaneity. Kind of erratic, erratic actions. And, to have erratic actions at a full moon is really quite intense. What day of the week is this? Well, thankfully, this is going to be on a Monday, so Monday tends to be a day when we are getting back into the groove. When you have a full moon on a Friday or Saturday night, that can be more challenging. So maybe that will modify things. But I can see when there's a full moon, the people, it's wackadoodle time sometimes, and this will be no exception. But it could just be for normal, everyday people who have kind of put up with a lot of crap, and they're just like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Luckily, the moon forms a sextile to Mars, and there's a lot of good aspects, actually, to Mars. So taking action, for the most part, is favorable if you're in the right frame of mind. But that is the key, because with the moon and Mercury squaring Mars, you may be like a little bit subdued at best in terms of like feeling like ready to take action. And the full moon is a time of letting go. It's a time of release and letting go of what doesn't serve you. I think with one interesting thing about this is with Aries, there can be like this very like dropping a bad habit, if you will. The Aries rules the first house, which is the house of the self, okay? And this can be a situation of perhaps deciding kind of spontaneously that you're ready to purify something. The first house is the body. So, or maybe I really am tired of living a sedentary life. I really am going to start being more active. And it's not even having to force yourself. It's like, it just is, it's like the light going on. The full moon can bring illumination. So it can be like you realize what's been holding you back and you're not willing to allow that. Again, with relationships, it can certainly be the key. Aries is a very independent sign, and that's something. So when you have that opposition between Aries and Libra, you're looking at, do I have to, wasn't there a book, it was like, do I have to give up me to be part of you or something like that? And I think it was in the 70s, pop psychology book or something. But the point is that, yeah, I mean, that polarity is really something that exists, you know. Am I, you know, if I am in a couple, is it coupledom? If I'm part of a couple, does that mean that I erase my individuality, that I have to like what you like 100% of the time, that I can't have any me time, that I can't have my own individual interests and life and friendships? You know, do I have to do everything with you? And these kinds of things can be really like bandied about between two people, you know, sometimes long-term relationships where it just comes to a head. You know, that's another thing about the full moon, something coming to a head. And I believe that with Aries, there might be like fever, you know, like that physical symptom of fever because of the fire. And so with a full moon, we're talking about, you know, purification, which means that things have to come to the surface in order to be like, you know, like toxins burned off. That's what fever is, you know, burning off toxins. So that could be what happens too, where things are brought out in the open, but what is brought out is like kind of a bunch of gook, you know, that is kind of like icky yucky, you know, and you have to navigate that. And with the squares to Saturn, it can feel kind of, I don't know, challenging, discouraging if you don't keep your head, you know, and it's easy to kind of lose it in the sense of getting too emotional, because there's also an opposition between the moon and Mercury. So the moon in Aries and Mercury in Libra. And Libra, as we know, is a sign that likes to make nice and likes to have everything be copacetic. And Aries likes to start shit, right? So at this time, emotions can flare, and when you get the mouth moving, and it can veer between the illogical outbursts, or like feelings, versus the trying to be rational. But they're kind of like there's a lack of integration there, so it may veer from one to the other, and it's a seesaw. And same with there's another opposition with Venus and Uranus, and this is also kind of what I was just talking about with the opposition between the Sun and Moon, and specifically the Aries-Libra opposition, where it's like independence versus togetherness, okay? And so with Venus, our relationship, our love versus my independence, Uranus. And also wanting maybe kind of excitement, not wanting to have a predictable relationship. And so there is, I think with Aries too, there's a lot of desire for excitement, novelty, like starting new things. And again, feeling like kind of stifled. And with that Saturn, Capricorn energy, the same old. And everything is so predictable. Everything is so orderly. I want a little bit of excitement. I want a little bit of danger in my relationship or in my life in general. And the other thing I wanted to talk about too is that Chiron is in the mix here, because Chiron is at 0 degrees of Aries. So it forms a tight square with the sun, with the moon. And, it depends on what you think of as tight. Yeah, I think it's pretty tight. And the thing about, and also with Saturn, okay, because Saturn is at 2 Capricorn. Okay, so with Chiron and Saturn squaring off, this could even be a karmic situation. You have to look at your individual chart to see where this plays out. But just in general, Chiron, the wounded healer. This is the asteroid that shows you, where there is woundedness. Now, this is transiting Chiron. This is not your natal. So this is kind of like more for the collective. Right now, we recently had Chiron entering Aries after it had completed a cycle. And it had been in Pisces for years and now is in Aries. I'm assuming it's in retrograde motion. I believe it is, because I think it got up to a couple of degrees of Aries. I don't have my ephemeris in front of me, but in any case, it is at 0 degrees. Yeah, I think it's going back into Pisces. Yeah, so it's retrograding. And so again, I think this is also propelling people in terms of like what they want to do with their life, and feeling like their life is slipping by, that they have allowed insecurities and, disempowerment to keep them playing small in life. And, because that's what I think of as the sun, is like, blooming to your full potential, the sunflower blooming to its full potential. And when you play small, when you allow other people to influence what your path is, people ridiculing and saying, that's a stupid idea, or who are you to try that? That's a grandiose idea. And Aries is, I think, kind of grandiose in a way, because fire energy thinks big, that's just how it is. But feeling, and I'm saying, if you are an early degree Aries person, this is going to be like if you're born around the time of the equinox, in the northern hemisphere, I call it the spring equinox, or I guess it's the fall in Aussie land and those areas, southern hemisphere. This is like a very game-changing time for you. Okay, so if you're born around the beginning of the astrological new year, 0 to 2 or 3 degrees of Aries, the first few degrees, depending on what year you're born. This can be very challenging, but very exciting too, because you have the opportunity to really heal a lot. And this is going to be true for anyone who has a cardinal sign. So in addition to that, if you have the sun in the first few degrees of Libra, around the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and Cancer, it all depends on the year, what 0 degrees will be for you. Okay. But those first few days of, you have to check your chart for exact degrees. And what's the other one that I leave out? Capricorn. So if you're born around the solstice, winter solstice, summer solstice, December 21st or 22nd, something like that, this is a real crunch time for you. Now, it may be challenging, and things may really be thrown into your face, but if you ride the wave, you stand to really gain a lot of, you can progress a lot. Just, come through the fire of Chiron and Aries. And let's see what else is going on. Well, let's talk about a couple of good things that are happening. My goodness, I'm making it sound like we're going to go through like a, trial by fire. Well, it is what it is. Bring it on, right? So there's going to be some great stuff happening as well. One thing is that the sun is trining Mars. And this is great for actualization. Yes. That's the ticket. And so what does that mean? Well, the sun is your core identity, and it's your potential for growth in this lifetime. Whatever your sun sign is. Now, obviously, this is talking about this is for the collective, okay? But I was talking about it in terms of your personal sun. But for all of us, what our potential is. And with Mars, what our drive, our ambition is, and how those connect. Sometimes we have challenges where we have a square in opposition from the sun to Mars, and that frustrates us. We want to accomplish something, but either we don't have the confidence for it, or we don't have a sense of vision for ourselves. And now we do. Now we have, the trine is the most... this is the easiest for manifestation because it doesn't take effort for these two planets to work in tandem, okay, work in a positive way. So this can play out as being able to advance more easily. So if you have some kind of something that you want to bring out, even though they say that new moons are the times for, launching new things, the full moon is the time of the greatest power. I mean, according to some people, and also the greatest abundance, creativity, energy in general. And so that is a great time to work on your projects, your ambitions, what you want, your goals. Mercury trine Mars makes for great alignment of your ideas and your goals. So you can take your ideas and put them into action. It's one thing to be an idea person, and some people have some brilliant ideas, but they might never put them into play. And so ultimately, what good is it? You can talk a good game, but until you actually make them happen, it doesn't mean anything. We also have the sun sextiling the North Node, which is great for, kind of serendipitous things kind of coming in that have to do with career matters. Sextiles can mean that you have to put in a little bit of effort to make it happen. I personally think that in all cases, you have to show up to life. Sometimes I read comments. It's quite interesting where people say, oh, I can't wait till Jupiter goes into Sagittarius. Or, I just read that, under some other astrologer's video. Or, oh, I can't wait till this happens. I can't wait till my new moon happens or what have you, because they think that it's coming from the outside. And these transits are like astrological weather forecasts. So it's saying that there's going to be beautiful weather on this date or that date. But if you sit at home and look at this beautiful blue sky outside, what good does it do you? You're not going to enjoy the day. But on the other hand, if they are forecasting rain and you are not resistant to rain, you don't need you don't need there to be a sunny day in order for you to be happy or productive. You can, have wonderful things happen in the rain. So at a certain point, the dualistic thinking of this is good, this is bad, has to be eradicated. And so transits have, to me, the ultimate purpose of a transit, of knowing about what these transits are, like this full moon and how it'll affect you, is that if you're experiencing anything, you're not in the dark. You're like, oh yeah, it's because this is happening, and you can make the best use of it. So for challenging things, it can give you a sense of control over your life, where you feel like, gosh, what else is going to hit me? And you don't, that's how we feel when we're fumbling around in the dark. We have no idea what's going on. At least it gives us some framework on these cycles so that we can realize that this too shall pass, and we kind of have an idea of when it shall pass. But on the other hand, on the flip side, these transits can be really wonderful, like the Sun sextile North Node. The North Node is our destiny, okay? And the North Node is an early degree of Leo. And Leo is about love, it's about creativity, and it's sextiling the Sun, which is an early degree of Libra. That's great for, coming across your soulmate. Because Libra and Leo both have connections to love. Leo being the ruler of the 5th house of love, and Libra being ruled by Venus. So this could be a time, but see, this is the thing, though, that North Node, whether it's the transing North Node or your natal North Node, is all about destiny. So this isn't about you doing something to facilitate it. Although I think we can, even in those cases, even when we're talking about aspects to the North Node and stuff like that, that we can make it more easily happen by our actions. But this is like good stuff that's destined to happen for you. And this could be like, it could be very sudden that you meet somebody, and that you weren't expecting to meet. That's what I'm trying to say. It just kind of happens. And whereas if I'm looking at somebody's natal chart and I'm looking at the 5th house, I can say, okay, from this date to this date, this might happen. So there's that, and then let me see, and then there's a trine between the moon and the North Node. So, even as you may be experiencing some emotional fluctuations, or like kind of veering between wanting to be rational and wanting to, and your emotions kind of going back and forth, there's also an easy flowing aspect to your North Node, which can indicate that intuitively that something good is happening, that this is whatever is happening is meant to be, and you're not trying to fight it. You don't feel like it's some kind of a curse or anything like that. And because, again, and especially this can be very comforting for those people in an early degree of those cardinal signs, because you may feel, particularly challenged by this with all of that, with the Saturn angle and stuff like that. But it can be very, very transformative in a short period of time. So it's, it's very interesting. Also, a sextile between Jupiter and Pluto, which can have some kind of a monetary benefit. Jupiter, along with Venus, is a planet that can actually benefit us financially. And also, when it's sextiling Pluto, there can be a very powerful kind of an increase. And as I say, the full moon is a time of increase too, a time of abundance and fertility. So that may impact somebody in a good way financially. So there's a lot going on here, but I think that it's going to be very powerful, to say the least. And as I was looking online, I saw that it's the harvest moon, which is really great too. Now, if you're in the southern hemisphere, I don't know if they consider that the harvest too, because you have everything. You have your spring, so that tends to be the planting time, not the harvest time. So maybe that's just a North American tradition, like probably, because I think it's associated with the Native Americans and what they would call the different moons. So, but Anytime there's a full moon, it's a harvest time. So that's good. Okay, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like a private reading, the link to my astrological readings is below. Take care. Bye.